$90. That's all I spent on this wood to make this dining table. Using construction lumber allowed me to try out some cool techniques to make something truly one of a kind, without worrying about how much it'll cost if I mess up. I'm personally a tool junkie and enjoy having nicer tools to play with, and always try to find local deals on lumber so I can save up for the toys. Don't get me wrong, I truly respect and love working with beautiful grain and denser wood. But as a hobbyist, that will always come second to the tools I get to play with. Whenever I can't find any awesome deals on quality hardwoods, I always revert to good old store-bought Douglas fir. That way I can continue to immerse myself into woodworking and not break my bank. The wife wanted a new table because ours was just crap. We don't have a big enough kitchen to throw parties and have a massive oak table for visitors to gawk at. So we decided something cheap that I could knock out quick would suffice. There are some caveats that come with building with construction lumber, like how wet it can get, and obviously how much time you need to spend picking out the straightest boards possible. If you have milling tools, then you can trade off the time in the store with time making everything flat yourself. Whenever I'm milling lighter colored wood, I like to mark things with a pencil to show how much is being removed. This gives me a reference to see when I've completely milled one side. I like to go overboard with it, almost like dancing with a pencil. I like to use and abuse my pencils, and not give them a call back later after I'm finished getting what I need out of them. If you've been with my channel since the beginning, you're probably noticing a more cinematic touch to the videos. I'm working hard on trying to make better, more entertaining videos as I finally got monetized, and I'm taking the next step into serving y'all better. If you enjoy woodworking along with a side of occasional entertainment in the form of self-degradation, click subscribe and grow with me. Also, I've had few very friendly comments about how unsafe it is to not use push blocks. And I promise, I'm going to never ever show me using a table saw without one ever again. Ever. Not even right now. After I mill stuff that I want to stay flat, I stack and sticker it for a couple of days as it's definitely going to warp again as the new layers are exposed. These sat for about 4 days and I remilled them one more time just to make sure they're at least a little more stable. If you're like me and forget things easily because you may have partied too much as a youngin', try marking your panels with a big triangle before joinery or glue up. It helps me remember my grain selection as things get moved around. I like to limit sanding as much as possible, so using a domino joiner, dowel jig, or cauls is a must. And honestly, this table will probably warp really quick anyways, but I'm not going for perfection. Luckily, in the woodworking world, we have a perfect word for lazy builds or mess-ups, and that word is rustic. I love rustic stuff, not because of its style or overall look, but because it makes me feel better about being lazy and sloppy. Whenever my wife asks me to do the dishes or take out the trash, I'm just going to start saying, it's rustic, it's a look. I'm pretty sure that'll go over great. I can't see any reason why it wouldn't. For me, gluing up panels larger than 24 inches is typically best done vertically, and in 2 sections. It's a lot easier to focus on keeping the 2 larger panels flat when glued up, rather than each individual board. The real reason is because I don't have enough 48-inch clamps, and that's the one thing I hate spending money on. It's a bar with clamp heads, and they're freaking expensive. I also don't take care of them well. They get covered in serious amounts of glue, and it's annoying to scrape it all off. I know I just mentioned being safe in my videos, but I wanted to take a second and point out something more important. I've noticed some woodworking channels talking about things that have nothing to do with woodworking, taking it as far as ladies using their body to distract from the craft, or loonies talking about conspiracies. I, for one, promise to never bring that crap here. I could never, in a million years, bring myself to mention anything as low-life as a conspiracy theory, especially to just attach that to my favorite hobby ever. Anyways, my bench wasn't big enough to glue up the final piece, so it all moved to the floor, which is unfortunate because my floor isn't flat at all. We all want things we don't have, even when we have enough. I started out with just a regular circular saw and a drill, and now my whole garage is a dedicated shop. I'm lucky. Even though I've grown this much, I keep dreaming about having a detached shop with larger table saw, better dust collection, and most importantly, a flat floor. I'll probably never be satisfied, but you know what they say. It's about the journey, not the finish line. Speaking of finish lines, we're nowhere near that with this build yet. We decided on a circle table, so I made the easiest circle cutting jig ever. I just grabbed a scrap piece of particle board and drilled holes in it. One hole is for a router bit to fit through, and the other is for a 1/4-inch dowel to spin around. Those holes are exactly half the diameter, or some would call the radius, of the size I wanted my circle. The router stuck fine to the particle board with double-sided tape. No need for all those fancy screws. Simpler really is better sometimes. I didn't plan on cutting all the way through this with the router. I just did my first circle cut so I could finish things off with a jigsaw and flush trim bit. If I had a bigger router, I probably would have kept going. But this one suits me fine and I don't mind taking the extra steps. Makes for good video at least. Jigsaws are actually my least favorite tool, but they make tasks like this so easy. Which means I could just grab a basic flush trim bit and flush it all up after the fact. This next trick is to get a crazy edge profile on the table saw. I thought it was pretty cool, so I'll try to explain it the best I can. Using a small roller bench behind the saw for support, I laid out a piece of particle board and clamped it down. After raising the blade, I marked a straight line and measured how deep I wanted the edge to be before drilling a hole for a dowel. Using the same hole from earlier when I cut the circle, I used a dowel to spin the table over the saw blade. Raising the blade little by little, I was able to work my way up to a rather deep and steep edge profile. It's kind of like a cove cut, but for edges. It's important to do this in small increments, although I'd say for obvious reasons it can get dangerous and you can damage a blade rather easily too. I set that aside and got that pesky jigsaw out to break down the base. I'll skip the milling process here, just know that it was annoying. I didn't know what I wanted for the base other than chunky legs, so I glued up 2 4x4s to make 3 legs. Why 3 legs, you ask? Remember when I said lazy and sloppy? Or rustic? Yeah. It's impossible to wobble on only 3 legs, meaning I don't have to focus on making it perfect and it'll still look cool and function fine. Think about it. Sometimes it's better to just go with the flow rather than overthinking a design. I do most of my pieces this way and only use plans for customer builds with expensive woods. 3 straight legs would look dumb, so I added some sort of bevel to them. I honestly don't know what the angle is. I just know it's somewhere between 0 and 180. This allows the legs to slope a little bit and it makes it look like I know more about what I'm doing. I ended up running into an issue solved relatively easily with this quick fix. Using leftover 4x4s, I milled them down to cauls to actually assist holding the table flat. They had to be somewhat decorative, so a chamfer was enough work to do the trick. You can see here how much the table warped, and my hope was that these cauls would pull it flat, like a table skirt. I used threaded inserts and 1/4-20 bolts to pull it together and allow for wood movement, and as you can see, it actually worked out quite well. I moved on to adding some Rubio chocolate sauce to the mix for finish. All my furniture is dark and mostly walnut, and I find Rubio's chocolate color on pine or poplar actually matches the standard black walnut color well. Just food for thought. Sweet, sweet chocolate food. And there you have it. A cheap-ass table made from pine, and it doesn't look too bad. Thanks for watching. Okay, bye.